What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a new comedy coming to theaters this coming weekend, and that film is called One of Them Days. Directed by Lamont and written by Sarita Singleton, this film stars people like Keke Palmer, SZA, Katt Williams, and many more. And before we get too far into this video, I want to say a big thanks to all of you guys for taking the time out of your day to listen to my review. And if you like early reviews for movies like this, or things like retrospective reviews, live streams, and the occasional vlog, then you're in the right place, and I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing. But if you're a returning viewer, well, thank you so much for coming back. And today we're going to be talking about the film One of Them Days, a film that I was looking forward to mainly because I like Keke Palmer. I've been a big fan of her since I was a kid, and when I first started to see her in things like Aquila and the Bee, and ever since then with all the various films she's been a part of, especially in the recent years with something like Jordan Peele's Nope, she's just consistently been able to capture a great sense of comedy, but also a really great dramatic actor in a lot of ways. So I was really excited. And I think one thing a lot of people were excited about going into this film is that the singer SZA is in this film. Now, to be completely honest, I'm not really familiar with her or her music. I just heard of her. I knew what she looked like. But outside of that, I went into this kind of, a little bit worried, because a lot of times when music artists come into the acting field without ever being in a movie before, it can be hit or miss. And so going into this, I wasn't a fan of SZA already, but based on the screening reaction I was in, there were some people that as soon as she appeared on screen, they were applauding. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of SZA fans that go into this movie specifically for her. But with all that said, I went into it hoping for a good time, but I was worried on the SZA side of things in terms of acting, but I was most notably a little bit worried with Lamont as the director, because he's mainly known for having directed music videos, and I believe this is the first time he's ever directed a film. So you have a lot of first times with this movie, but what I was hoping for was a straightforward, fun comedy, and in some ways I feel like I got that, and in a lot of ways I felt like we got another run-of-the-mill movie. But before we get into my personal opinion on the film, let's get into what this movie is all about. One of Them Days focuses on Keke Palmer as the character of Drew alongside SZA's character Alyssa, who unfortunately on the first of the month find themselves without their rent money. So the rest of the movie they must try to find a way to scrounge up as much money as they can to try to save their apartment. Over the course of the film, of course, they try these different antics to try to get some money, which ends up getting them into some trouble. And that is the base gist of this film without getting too far into it. What I can say about this film in a lot of ways is that it's very slapsticky, it's very silly, it knows what it is, it's not trying to take itself too seriously. And I think if you're going into this looking forward to a lighthearted film that has some, some sex jokes and some pop culture references and different things like that, then you'll find yourself enjoying a lot of the sequences in this film. There's a lot about this film that is very tongue-in-cheek, it's very self-aware, and by no means is asking you to kind of use your brain. It's a film that's definitely mindless in a lot of ways when it comes down to the humor, and in a lot of ways feels like a safe film. Very predictable, very convenient when it comes down to its narrative, and something that I feel like people can throw on a streaming service somewhere down the line and find themselves just having a chuckle here or there. When it comes down to the filmmaking, it's competently made. I don't think this is a film that is going for top tier cinematography or musical score or performances or anything like that. So it's one of those films that I can't necessarily say was greatly made, but it's competently made. It's not a terribly made film. It needs what it needs for this film to succeed. When it comes down to the various performances over the course of the film, I think the best performance by far is Keke Palmer, and I don't think that's going to come to a surprise to many people. I think she's easily the biggest name here in terms of an actual actor. I think that she really gives a lot of nuance to her performance, and she's easily the character that, even though this is a really silly and dumb film that doesn't really have a great heightened sense of stakes, she's the kind of character that you can actually root for as the time goes on, and she's the one character you'll actually feel for as the movie plays out. SZA is in the mix, like I mentioned before, and I do think she gives a fine performance. I don't think she gives a bad performance as somebody who hasn't been in a scripted film like this before. Her performance is passable, but I don't really like her character, I won't lie. The character of Alyssa is without a doubt the most frustrating character in this film. And while she does have some funny moments in the film, and there's a nice camaraderie between her and Keke Palmer's character, there's a nice friendship kind of relationship there over the course of the film. Unfortunately, everything that goes wrong in this film is SZA's character's fault, and it was so frustrating to consistently watch this character that in a lot of ways just took no responsibility and was the sheer issue for every single thing. And of course, by the time you get to the end of the film, all these characters kind of have their moment to shine. Some of the side characters that are in the film, but most notably, of course, Keke Palmer and SZA. But SZA, for me, was incredibly frustrating in this film. But I'll give her flowers in the fact that I think that for the first time being in a movie, she definitely lent herself to being in a ridiculous, silly comedy like this, and I don't think she gave a bad performance, even if I didn't like her character. With all that said, I honestly didn't love this film. I thought that a lot of the humor was kind of just generic. There wasn't really much to this film on a narrative or screenplay level. I thought that the script across the board was pretty weak. I thought a lot of the humor in the film was stuff that we've seen time and time again, and it was just kind of recycled humor. You know, there was a couple of moments, I won't lie, where I chuckled. It's not a terrible movie. I don't think it's like the worst thing you could watch if you ran to the theaters. I think there's going to be people who enjoy this. There were people in my theater who were laughing at certain parts, but a lot of it just felt like just kind of cheap jokes to me. You know, again, I think this is kind of like a mindless film that if you're going into this just kind of hoping for a good time with your friends, you'll probably enjoy yourself. But if you're looking for a comedy that's going to be something that kind of feels like a fun throwback, that's something that's going to be like, oh, I want to watch this time and time again, is something that can kind of become timeless, I don't necessarily know that that's what this film is going to be. I think there's going to be an audience that's serviced by this film, but it's just one of those films that I think is going to come out and weeks or months down the line, people are not really going to think about this movie. I think Keke Palmer is solid in it, and there's a fun friendship relationship in the film that did bring up some great moments of humor, but I ultimately found majority of the characters to be pretty unlikable. And while there are a few laughs in the film for sure, for me, I found a lot of the humor to just kind of be just there. It wasn't really anything that ever really made me laugh or even smile much. I spent most of the time watching this movie just kind of staring at the screen, just seeing things play out. It was just kind of whatever. That's the best way I could kind of say I feel about this film. But I think when it comes down to comedy, it's always a subjective thing, right? I mean, that's what it is with art and film in general. But when it comes down to the way I break down films here on this channel, a lot of times I like to bring in the filmmaking. I like to bring in the themes. I like to bring in all the various performances. And with a film like this that's not really going for heightened filmmaking, but instead is just kind of going for a silly, dumb movie, you kind of have to look at it through that lens. And so I do think there's going to be an audience for this film, but unfortunately that audience was not me. And I do think there's going to be a lot of film fans that go into this hoping for a fun comedy that might walk out thinking, that was just okay, because the story isn't all that great, the characters aren't all that great, and the humor is just kind of whatever. But you know, there were people in my theater that were laughing, so I do take that into account, that humor is going to be more subjective than art itself. Movies in general are already subjective, but humor is so subjective and so specific to individuals that I do take into account that that's where there'll probably be a divide between some people who even probably watched this video and how I took the film in. And a perfect example, and this is where I'll wrap up my review, is that as I was leaving the theater, there was a woman that was like, oh yeah, you know, that was kind of fun, that was a good time, that's kind of what I was looking for. You know, she goes, sci-fi and serious films, that stuff I don't really get, I don't really understand it, I don't really connect to it, but this kind of movie was my kind of thing. And so I take that into account. I try to respect the fact that there is different taste out there. Me, on the other hand, I'd much rather watch a serious or sci-fi film, because that stuff really connects with me and I get it. And a film like this for me just felt like a run-of-the-mill comedy that we've seen so many times before, but that never really elevated the material. It had a pretty weak screenplay and script, and some of the humor was just whatever. The performances are fine, but nothing to write home about. And this is by no means a film I can give a recommendation for. Neither is it a film that I can see myself revisiting ever again. So that's going to be my thoughts on One of Them Days. Not a film I loved, but a film that was just okay at best for me. But I look forward to hearing the various opinions on this one. Have you checked out this movie? Are you planning on checking out this film? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.